Hello there, lovely people, it's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and yes, as the title pertains, I have indeed played Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, or more specifically, I played Pokémon Scarlet, specifically. Nintendo and the Pokémon Company invited me down to the Pokémon Company's headquarters in London, and I got to play the game for about an hour and a half, and I'm going to tell you my opinions. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. So, as you might be able to tell from the introduction and my current tone of voice, what I've got for you isn't all good news, and I want to get the bad news out of the way first, because I feel that it's important. It's been genuinely playing on my mind, actually, and I've been subconsciously putting off recording this video, because I don't like putting things down. If you don't care about performance or anything like that, we'll have chapter markers. You can skip ahead if you like, but I do encourage you to at least begin this section. So, the thing that has really disappointed me about this game is the performance. The performance is... I'm gonna be frank, and I've only... The version that I played isn't the final build of the game. There's still arguably time for things to be improved, but it still feels very close to the wire for that to happen. Performance is not good. The classic example of the Japanese trailer, which showed the Sunflora running after the player, seemed to be running absolutely fine, but the English-speaking ones, the trailers, the Sunflora all looked really dodgy, and I did that, and the Sunflora ran at that FPS, to be brutally honest with you. The game appears to be running primarily at 720p. There might be some dynamic scaling going on, and certainly in certain interiors, it is definitely running at a higher resolution, but in the open world, it's 720p. It doesn't seem to go any lower, but it also doesn't really seem like it goes much higher. I can't say for certain with that, but suffice it to say, 99% of the time when I was looking at the screen, I was like, this is 720p, and after looking at the footage that was given to me, it's 720p. The game also, unsurprisingly, as you've probably been able to tell from trailers and the like, runs at a maximum of 30 frames a second, and it doesn't consistently reach that a lot of the time from what I feel. I don't think I managed to get a good, stable 30 frames per second for any longer than maybe about 10 seconds in-game when actually moving around and doing stuff. If I looked at the floor, I'm certain I could have got it, but actually playing the game, I would say it was averaging at around about... No, I don't even want to give an average, because I'm just not qualified for that sort of thing, and I don't have my own gameplay to refer back to, because I wasn't allowed to capture. As I mentioned or alluded to earlier with the Sunflora, there's a sort of dynamic FPS depending on how close you are to other objects, characters, and things like that. And generally, it gets by okay. Sort of the Pokémon actually in the overworld generally seem to run all right. A bit like Arceus. Maybe a little bit better. But as soon as you get into a town, and that's a town that isn't like one of the main cities, because the main cities are their own environment. They're completely cut off from the open world. You go up to them and you go into a loading screen. But the smaller towns just in the open world, it's a mess. You can have characters, only sort of 10 meters or so in-game away from you, maybe not even that, running at 15 frames per second or lower. And, so as I mentioned with the Sunflora, it can get even worse than that. And I would generally be a little bit more forgiving of that if then when you started like speaking to the person or stuff like that, or engaging in the Pokemon battle. That's the main one that I have to focus on. I engaged in the Sunflora task that I did for a gym challenge or whatever it was called. I engaged with the Sunflora, got into a battle with it, and that just happened in the overworld, which is good. Don't get me wrong, I love the overworld battles. It just feels much more real then, much more substantial. It feels much more like a world, and that is really good. And I've got much more good stuff to talk about. I just want to get this out of the way. So the Sunflora was running at a low resolution, maybe I would say at an estimate 10 frames a second, maybe 15 frames a second. As I was running towards it, it was running away from me, and I interacted with it. Oh, battle! And that's how you get the Sunflora to follow you. The thing is that when I actually went into the battle, the Sunflora remained at that frame rate, and it was really jarring because my Pokemon running at a great frame rate, really quite a good 30 frames a second. The Sunflora no. And it was really distracting and just felt unfinished. When you're in a battle as well, it can take quite a long time. If you're just switching your Pokemon, like if your Pokemon faints or something, you switch another one in, or you just switch it because you want to, it can sometimes take a weirdly long amount of time for that to happen. And I can only assume, and this is an assumption, I can only assume that it's loading your Pokemon's model in, your new Pokemon's model, and it's taking a little bit of time, or it's clearing out some memory somewhere else, or something like that. I don't know, but it is weird, and it does kind of upset the flow of things. The same also happens with terrestrialization. You use it, is it even pronounced terrestrialization? When you turn your Pokemon into a weird crystal chintzy thing from your grandmother's house, that takes about 15 seconds as well, which isn't great. It's quite a long animation. I don't know if you can skip it. I tried, but I didn't try everything. It would be good if in the final game we could skip it, because it is a lengthy animation. The dreaded walking in place animation, which was memed to death with either Zacian or Zamazenta, I think it depended on your version of the game. That is still here in some form. I don't think I've got any footage that shows it, but I noticed it mostly when trying to enter a building and, or, you know, sort of anything like that, you know, going to a big gate. If I had approached it at an angle rather than dead center, the player character would look directly ahead and just sort of moonwalk, although sideways, into position, which was quite disappointing as well. I managed to do a gym battle as well, the grass gym leader with the Sunflora challenge, as it were, and I got to do a gym battle, and it was, you know, it was fine. It was just a gym battle, but interestingly, gym battles take place in their own enclosed arena, which appears to be, I mean, thematically it's set in the open world, it's outside, but it's a separate arena. I had to go into a building and, you know, sort of like the gym. Whoa. And I spoke to the person at the desk, and after I did the Sunflora thing, they were like, hey, do you want to try the gym challenge? And it was just like, yes. And it just went, okay, loading screen. And then I was in the gym arena, and then loading screen again to go back out. So I believe it's a separate environment. And what also really reinforces that is it runs really well. It seems to be running at a high resolution, more consistent frame rate as well. Loading between switching Pokemon didn't take nearly as long, so it feels like these are separate enclosed arenas, which is fine, if a bit weird. I do actually want to talk about the interiors as well, because the interiors of, you know, sort of buildings that I went into and stuff, and not every building you can enter has an interior. Oftentimes you'll walk up to a door and you'll just get like, hi, welcome to the ice cream shop. Do you want some ice cream? It's just a menu, which is fine, but, you know, would have been nice with a bit of an interior. But salons, they have an interior still, which is good. They look suspiciously the same as Sword and Shield, at least in general layout. But the interiors look really good. Like, it's actually kind of jarring to when I went into the gym, and I do actually have footage of this. When I went into the gym for the first time, there was the rival sort of mentor character, Nimona, and she was there, and she was like, hey, you know, sort of, what's going on? And, you know, general dialogue and stuff like that. Her model looks fantastic. Like, the texture on the shirt is weirdly high resolution, like really crisp, and she looks, her model and your character model in that instance looks fantastic. But it is only in the interior scenes. I haven't seen her in the overworld, but a lot of the other overworld characters just don't look as good. It's quite inconsistent, which I know is not unusual. Main characters often get a higher poly count and, you know, texture resolution applied to them, but it is like very stark, especially if you're in the main city. The name escapes me. I went into that, and unfortunately I don't have much footage of this. I do have a little bit, but nothing that really illustrates my point. There are certain instances, certain angles where the city looks absolutely rough as hell. I just... The textures are all blurry, and it looks like some of the chairs and things like that are kind of like part of the same model as the ground. I don't know if that's the case, but the textures are just a complete blur. They're really indistinct, and blurry textures, you can work off them sometimes, but it just doesn't work here. And it's visually a mess. That's all I want to say in detail about performance. I'll move on to some other stuff now, but I felt it was really important to get that across because it was thoroughly disappointing. But there is some good stuff to be seen here, and there was a lot about the game that I actually really enjoyed. For one thing, just the idea of the open world is really good. Performance aside, the concept is really good. It's not outlandish, but it works really well, and the execution from a mechanical point of view is pretty damn good. There are some weird things about it, like, you know, I go into a battle with a Pokemon, and there are other Pokemon around. I was kind of mobbed, and I needed to move on to a different part of the game, and so all the staff were like, oh, Alex, just run away, and I couldn't because the Pokemon was too low a level. But the other Pokemon that were in the wild was still there, which is good, although they were just kind of sort of standing there, which is a bit weird. One thing I really liked, it's not unique at all, but I just really appreciated it. When you set a waypoint, which you can do, you can say, I want to go to this place. The game goes, okay, and then it takes you out of the map, and then it actually just takes control away for a moment, only about sort of a second and a half or 2 seconds or something, but it takes your camera from where it was and it pans it round and points it in the direction that you need to go as the crow flies, which is a really nice little feature. As I say, it's not unique in any sense, but it just kind of sort of, certainly for younger players as well, it's just kind of like, oh, it's over here. And, you know, sometimes when you can get a bit disorientated between the map and the overworld, so that genuinely really helpful. Another thing I really liked is that when you get a Pokemon now, when you catch a new Pokemon, it shows this lovely little animation about it going into the Pokedex, and it's like each Pokemon has its own little book. And that was just pleasant. It meant catching a new Pokemon felt a lot more of an event overall. It was kind of like, yeah, you got a new Pokemon, pow, 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 slam this book into a shelf, and it's like, yeah, I did something substantial. So I really like that. Another thing I really appreciated when leveling up Pokemon that are a low level, you know how in previous games it would go EXP, you know, you're fighting a Pokemon that's level 50, you've got a level 1 in your party, and it goes brap-a-ding, brap-a-ding, or brap-brap-brap-brap-brap, which it's done in other games. You know, it fills the EXP bar multiple times, and it can take quite a long time. It now just does it in one animation. It just goes brrrr, and it just fills it up, and then, you know, that's, you know, filling up all the levels, and then whatever's left, you know, of the current level that you're on your EXP bar. That was really nice. It just streamlined the whole process. I really like it. Trainer battles are now an actual choice, which is good. There's no, like, line of sight or anything like that, which, you know, I kind of like the line of sight thing, but I can understand that it's a bit of a hangover, really. So you want to train a battle, you can see, you know, trainers have like a distinct icon above them. I think it's just an exclamation mark or something. You go up to them, you press A, and they're like, I want to battle. You battle. Nice. Mad that it's taken this long, but stylings are all now gender non-specific. You can have any hairstyle you like, which for a lot of people that I know with long hair who are blokes, that's a big deal. Like Mr. Xeon, I'm sure in particular, is going to be very happy that he can have his long hair on his Pokemon avatar at last. There's no reason to restrict things just based on what gender that you pick at the start, or style, I think it's called, or body type. I don't know. I didn't actually get to start the game at the very start. So yeah, that can only be a good thing. I remember there was like a pair of boots in Pokemon Sword and Shield that were only for girls, and I was like, but they're just boots. I want those boots. Why can I not have those boots? Speaking of character customization, though, it's a bit weird. There's no distinct tops and bottoms, or at least there wasn't in what I was playing. It was just, you had uniforms, they called them. And I know there's the whole sort of school theming and stuff like that, but, you know, what if I want to wear jeans and a Hawaiian shirt? You know, mad that I would want to wear something like that. I suppose it means that they can be a little bit more tailored, if you'll pardon the pun, so that all of the uniforms, as they call them, are more sort of like more like actual outfits, and not necessarily, oh well, we've got to make sure that there's no clipping between any of them, so we have to limit X, Y, Z. Again, if you'll pardon the pun. But it is a little bit disappointing. I didn't see the range. I only saw, like, what I presume are the default uniforms that they offer, which are spring, summer, autumn, and winter, if you can believe it. Winter's pretty cool. The other ones, summer and spring, quite similar. Autumn, also somewhat similar. What is annoying, though, in the styling this sort of scene is the fact that you can't preview an item. You have to actually put it on in order to see what it looks like. And it can take a few seconds for the model to load back in wearing that item of clothing, which is kind of irritating. But at the same time, to change your style, you just press left on the D-pad pretty much any time, as long as I'm assuming you're not in a Pokemon battle. Going back to the Pokedex, because I forgot to mention this, it now also lists recently battled and recently caught Pokemon. So if you've caught a Pokemon and you just kind of skip through the Pokedex entry because, I don't know, you had to go and make dinner or, you know, eat dinner, you can then, when you get back, you can just sort of whip it up and see, yeah, okay, that was that Pokemon. You can see its habitat and all that sort of thing, all the sort of usual Pokedex stuff. It's just handy to be able to just quickly, you know, you've just battled a Pokemon even, and you're like, what was that? What was that? And you can go to the Pokedex entry, learn a little bit more about it. I mean, obviously, if you didn't catch it, it would be a limited entry, but still. I also had a go at the Terror Raids, which was, I was a little bit dubious about the Terror Raids. I was like, oh, it's just going to be like the Dynamax raids and stuff like that. And, I mean, you know, sort of the core concept is the same, but, you know, it's actually... I'm not big on the whole sort of terrestrialization. I'm not big on the concept of terrestrialization. I think it's, I don't want to say lazy, but it's kind of low energy, you know, sort of, hey, your Pokemon goes crystal and gets a funny hat. Wow. But the Terror Raids, like the environment you're in, it's like this sort of crystal cave and stuff like that. And I'm not big on the whole sort of chintzy crystal vibe, but it's actually really cool. It feels like you're fighting inside a geode, or like inside a giant fox's glacier mint. The whole thing takes place in real time as well. Within reason, I believe your speed affects how often you can attack, and at times it's a little bit unclear how often you can attack and things like that. You sort of feel like you're kind of waiting around for something to happen, and like a progress bar or something like that to fill back up. That would be quite nice. There isn't one there, or if there is, I totally missed it, but it's okay, you know? It kind of keeps the tension high. You're always wanting to attack, and your teammates are attacking at the same time, and you're just trying to hammer this Pokemon down. It's better than the Dynamax thing taking turns. Also, you respawn if you die, which is pretty cool, and you can like cheer and stuff like that, and it actually does something now, instead of maybe doing something like in Sword and Shield. Also, the music in the Terror Raids, mwah! Also, the music generally is pretty damn good. Certainly in like the gym battles, that, you know, there's in Sword and Shield, you're in a stadium and stuff, and so at the end there was sort of like this chanting, you know, sort of go, whoa, 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 you know, it did all that. And it's not the same chanting, but it's the same idea. You've got chanting from around you when it comes down to the gym leader's final Pokemon. And that's just a detail that I thoroughly enjoyed about Sword and Shield, and I'm really pleased to see it back. It's a good, not such a good thing, but it's on my list of notes, and I want to talk about as much as I can. The Team Star compound. I didn't actually get to go into it and like do any of that because I was quite limited on time, so I had to kind of prioritize what I did, and I wanted to do the gym stuff for some reason. The Team Star compound, I nearly went into it accidentally. I was just flying around, flew into it, and it sort of like stopped me in my tracks, and I was like, oh, what's going on? Is this going to tell me I'm at the edge of the world or something? Even though I was pretty sure I wasn't at the edge of the world. No, I was at the edge of the compound, and it was like, hey, now, don't come in that way. You've got to storm the gate. You've got to do this properly. And it was just like, really? That's your reasoning? You know, sort of, it's not like they've got a force field or something around there, or it's dangerous, they got Pokemon on the ridge and they'll attack you, and Professor Oak pops up in your ear and goes, oh, you shouldn't use a bike here, or go into that compound because Pokemon will shoot you down, or something like that. No, it was just like, hey, now, you're naughty, you've got to storm the gate if you're going to do it properly, which felt a bit weak, to be brutally honest with you, and very much, hey, you're not playing the game right. Play it properly. Play it properly. Not a fan of that, to be honest. Also, generally, going around the overworld felt a bit... I mean, it didn't feel bad, but it didn't feel great either. You know, you can sprint and stuff like that, and you can fly, but I don't know if it's going to get upgraded or something like that, but the flying especially felt really quite weak. Like, you don't go very fast at all. It's not like the glider where you feel like you've got this momentum and stuff like that. You just sort of like freely go around without any kind of inertia within reason. I mean, there's a bit, but you know, it's not great. It doesn't feel great to fly around especially. Sprinting is all right, but yeah, flying let's just say the bravery in Arceus felt a lot better, and I'm surprised they didn't just copy and paste that. But maybe it's an unlock later on. I got to have a go at the multiplayer as well, and my initial impression when playing it was like, hey, this is okay, but I don't see it having legs. But upon reflection, and I'm pleased I waited a little bit and actually reflected upon it, you know, important for a video, I think that actually it's better than I thought it was at the time. I felt it was a bit sort of like, hey, there are people here, now what? And there is a degree of that. I mean, I was playing with other, you know, sort of members of the media and stuff like that, and a member of the Pokémon International Company International. So I wasn't really getting a proper sense of the multiplayer, but I thought about how, you know, sort of, I can just run around and do things with Sasha or, you know, some of my friends and stuff like that. And that's actually, you know, the fact that there's no sort of like strict, oh, you have to remain in this area, because you don't. You can go off wherever you like and just, you know, sort of do your own thing. But then if you want to, you can meet up and actually do some stuff. I quite like that. I think it's quite flexible, and the fact that it is so open is only a good thing. It does feel a little bit directionless as a result, but I think that only means what you can do is even broader than possible. I don't know, like, whether you can do things like double battles and things like that, but you can battle other people, you can trade with them and stuff like that as well. And yeah, it's all right. I think I need more time with it. I've got one more note I want to talk about, but it is a bit of a sad one. The day-night cycle, for some reason, I can't say this for certainty, because it happened when I was in a gym battle. I don't know if that changes anything or something like that, but the day-night cycle appeared to be borderline instantaneous. Like, the day-night, you know, sort of the transition from day to night, it was just like, hey, it's daytime, la 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 la, oh, nighttime. Like, it was just like a few seconds. So it was just like the sun just went, moon. And, if you'll pardon the pun again, you see Pokemon's and everything's a pun. If that is the case in the overworld, that is a bit disappointing, to be honest. I want to see dusk, I want to see twilight, I want to see another name for the end of the day when the sun's kind of gone down. Not a big deal by any stretch, but, yeah. In short then, I would describe my experience with the game so far, having played an hour and a half of it and experiencing the performance, the new ideas, as kind of, it's frustrating. No, playing the game wasn't frustrating, but feeling that there are so many of these new ideas and fun ideas and little things, like really minor things, like it was raining at one point and my character, when, you know, sort of when it started raining, was walking through the rain like that, you know, sort of shielding themselves. That's a lovely little detail. That's the kind of thing I live for. But it's surrounded and marred by really bad performance and a lot of areas that just don't look good. It feels like the developers are either biting off more than they can chew, or something else is holding them back. I don't know whether it's funding, whether it's the engine, whether it's because they can't get the funding to develop a new engine, or what, but something, it's like I can feel the frustration of the developers. They want to put in all these ideas. They want to put in all these quality of life improvements, you know, things like auto battling and stuff like that, which I still don't fully get. But, you know, it's fine that it's there. You know, they want to put all these things in, and they're putting them in, and they're, you know, they're getting the green light, but the game almost can't handle it all. It's ambitious in many ways. It's ambitious for the engine, I feel. It's ambitious for the engine. It's ambitious maybe for the team, I don't know. But I think the main disappointment is that whilst it is ambitious in that sense, it is not ambitious when you compare it to other games running on the Switch. There are other games that do open world, that do all these different mechanics, that do so much more, and it runs so much better. And I don't want to stick on performance too much, but it is hard to ignore it because it's everywhere. It's not like, oh, there are certain sections that run really poorly. There are certain sections that run surprisingly well, and that's not good. And I really hope that what I played was just an early build, well, an early-ish build, not the final build, because it obviously wasn't, and that the final build will run a lot better. But I'm concerned that that won't be the case. Good ideas, good new Pokemon as well, good ambition, you know, to finally make this big open Pokemon game, you know, like Arceus, but, you know, it's the full fat Pokemon experience. But it needs longer. It needs more development. It needs more polish. I really hope the final product runs better than what I played. I really hope. How are you feeling about the game? Let us know with a comment down below. And thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you regrettably talk about that subscribe button? And be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.